Horse wouldn't stop digging after the funeral. When they discovered the reason, no one could believe it. The autumn breeze swept through the rolling hills of Lexington, Kentucky, carrying whispers of untold secrets across the prestigious Carter family estate. As the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Emily Carter stood at the window of her colonial-style mansion, her eyes fixed on the magnificent stallion in the paddock below. Star, her son Ethan's beloved horse, hadn't been the same since that fateful day 3 months ago. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Let us know which city you're watching from. Stay with us. The Carter Horse Farm had always been known for its championship thoroughbreds, but Star was different. He wasn't just another prize-winning stallion. He was Ethan's closest companion, a soulmate in equine form. Emily watched as the horse paced restlessly near the fence line, his behavior growing more peculiar with each passing day. "Jack," Emily called out to her husband, who was reviewing paperwork in his study. "Come look at Star. He's doing it again." Jack Carter joined his wife at the window, his weathered face creasing with concern as he observed the horse's unusual behavior. Star had stopped his pacing and was now pawing at the ground near the fence, exactly where he'd been digging for the past few days. "I've never seen anything like it," Jack muttered, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. 25 years of breeding horses, and I've never encountered behavior quite like this." Emily wrapped her arms around herself, fighting back a shiver that had nothing to do with the autumn chill. "It's like he's trying to tell us something." The horse farm had always been their pride and joy, a legacy built on generations of careful breeding and training. The Carters were respected throughout Kentucky's equestrian community, known not only for their exceptional horses, but also for their integrity and dedication to the sport. But now, something felt different. The familiar comfort of their daily routines had been replaced by an unsettling tension that seemed to emanate from every corner of the estate. The stable hands whispered among themselves, and even the other horses appeared more agitated than usual. "Perhaps we should have Dr. Reynolds come take another look at him," Emily suggested, referring to their trusted veterinarian. Jack shook his head slowly. "Dr. Reynolds has examined him 3 times already. She says there's nothing physically wrong with him." It's almost as if he trailed off, leaving the thought unfinished, but Emily knew what he was thinking. Star's behavior had changed dramatically since Ethan's accident, and while horses were known to be sensitive creatures, this went beyond normal animal behavior. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew their attention. Sarah Martinez, their head trainer, was returning from exercising one of their younger horses. As she dismounted near the stables, Star suddenly lifted his head, his ears pricking forward with intense focus. "Look," Emily whispered, pointing to the stallion. Star had abandoned his digging and was now standing perfectly still, his gaze fixed on something beyond the paddock fence. The setting sun cast long shadows across the ground, and in the growing darkness, the horse's silhouette seemed almost mythical. Sarah approached the house, her boots crunching on the gravel driveway. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," she called out, her voice carrying a note of urgency. "You need to see something." Jack and Emily exchanged glances before heading outside to meet their trainer. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of hay and leather from the nearby stables. Sarah waited for them by the paddock gate, her expression troubled. "I found something while riding along the old trail," she began, reaching into her jacket pocket. "Something that might explain Star's strange behavior." As Sarah withdrew her hand, Emily felt her heart skip a beat. There, resting in the trainer's palm, was a tarnished piece of metal that caught the last rays of sunlight. It was an old spur, its surface marked with rust and something darker that made Emily's blood run cold. Jack took the spur, turning it over in his hands with the careful attention of someone who had spent a lifetime working with riding equipment. His expression darkened as he examined the object more closely. "Where exactly did you find this?" he asked, his voice tight with barely contained emotion. Sarah pointed toward the wooded area that bordered their property. "Near the big oak tree, sir." "The one where—" She hesitated, glancing at Emily before continuing. "The one where Ethan used to rest after his morning rides." The discovery of the rusty spur set in motion a chain of events that would unravel the carefully constructed facade surrounding the Carter family's recent tragedy. As the night descended over the Kentucky countryside, Starr's unusual behavior intensified, drawing Emily and Jack deeper into a mystery they hadn't realized existed. That evening, Emily couldn't sleep. The memory of Starr's insistent pawing at the ground haunted her thoughts. Around midnight, she found herself walking toward the stables, drawn by an inexplicable force. The familiar scent of hay and leather surrounded her as she approached Starr's stall. The horse was awake, his intelligent eyes following her every move. "What are you trying to tell us, boy?" she whispered, reaching out to stroke his velvet nose. Starr had been more than just a horse to Ethan. He had been a confidant, a friend who seemed to understand the boy in ways that sometimes even his parents couldn't. Emily remembered countless afternoons watching her son talk to Starr for hours, sharing secrets and dreams that only the horse would ever know. A sudden noise from outside startled both Emily and Starr. Through the stable window, she caught a glimpse of a shadow moving near the fence line. Her heart raced as she peered into the darkness, but whatever had caused the movement was gone. Starr, however, was agitated, pawing at his stall door with increasing urgency. The next morning, Jack found fresh footprints in the mud near where Starr had been digging. They were large boot prints, different from the ones made by their regular stable hands. When he showed Emily, she remembered the shadow from the previous night, and a chill ran down her spine. "We need to check the security cameras," Jack decided, his face set with determination. But when they reviewed the footage, they discovered that the cameras covering that particular area had mysteriously stopped working during the night. The timing was too convenient to be a coincidence. Sarah Martinez arrived early that morning, her usual composed demeanor slightly shaken. "Mr. Carter, there's something else you should know," she said, leading them to the tack room. "Ethan's saddle. It's been moved." The saddle in question had remained untouched since the accident, hanging in its designated spot like a shrine to their son's memory. Now it lay on the ground, as if someone had hastily examined it and failed to return it properly. Emily picked it up with trembling hands, and as she did so, something fell from its folds, a small piece of paper with what appeared to be handwritten numbers. "These look like coordinates," Jack observed, studying the faded writing. The paper was weathered, suggesting it had been there for some time, but they were certain they would have noticed it during their previous handling of the saddle. Starr's behavior grew increasingly erratic throughout the day. During his morning exercise, he repeatedly tried to lead Sarah toward the wooded trail, fighting against her guidance with uncharacteristic stubbornness. The same trail where the mysterious spur had been found. "There's something about that trail," Emily mused, watching from the paddock fence. "Starr keeps trying to tell us something about it." As if in response to her words, Starr suddenly broke free from Sarah's hold and galloped toward the fence line. Instead of trying to escape, however, he stopped at the exact spot where he had been digging and began pawing at the ground again with even greater intensity than before. This time, Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed a shovel from the nearby tool shed and began to dig where Starr indicated. The horse watched intently, his ears forward as Jack's shovel struck something solid beneath the soil. Carefully brushing away the dirt, Jack uncovered a small metal box, its surface corroded by time and elements. Emily held her breath as her husband lifted it from its earthen grave. The box was locked, but years of exposure had weakened the mechanism. With trembling hands, Jack forced the lock open. Inside, they found something that made their blood run cold, a collection of old photographs and a worn leather journal. But it was what lay beneath these items that caused Emily to gasp. Ethan's missing watch, the one he had worn every day, the one that should have been with him during the accident. As they stood there, staring at their discovery, Star's agitated neighing drew their attention to the stable entrance. Standing there, frozen in apparent surprise, was Marcus Thompson, their former stable hand, who had left shortly after the accident. His unexpected appearance sent a jolt of recognition through Star, who began to rear and stamp his hooves in obvious distress. "Mr. Thompson," Jack said slowly, carefully placing the box behind his back, "this is unexpected. I thought you had moved out of state." Marcus's eyes darted between them and the partially excavated hole in the ground. I just came to collect some personal items I left behind," he stammered, his usual confidence notably absent. "I didn't think anyone would be out here so early." Emily watched as Star's reaction to Marcus grew more intense, the horse's behavior more agitated than she had ever seen it. In that moment, she realized that Star's strange actions hadn't been random at all. They had been warnings, clues to a truth that had been buried alongside that rusty old box. The tension in the morning air was palpable as Marcus Thompson shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny of his former employers. Star's continued agitation served as a backdrop to the uncomfortable silence, his hooves striking the ground with increasing urgency. "I should go," Marcus muttered, taking a step backward. "I can come back another time for my things." "Actually," Jack said, his voice firm but controlled, "I think we need to have a conversation, Marcus. There are some things that don't quite add up." Emily watched as Marcus's face paled slightly, his eyes darting between them and the partially visible metal box in Jack's hands. Star's reaction to the former stable hand's presence had triggered something in her memory, the way the horse had always been slightly uneasy around Marcus, even before the accident. Sarah Martinez stepped forward, positioning herself strategically between Marcus and the stable exit. As the head trainer, she had always had a keen sense for reading both horses and people. "Mr. Thompson," she said carefully, "why don't we all go up to the house? I'm sure Mrs. Carter could make us some coffee." The suggestion, though casual in tone, carried an unmistakable weight. Marcus hesitated, then nodded stiffly, seeming to realize he had little choice in the matter. Inside the Carter's kitchen, Emily busied herself with the coffee maker, while Jack placed the mysterious box on the table. The morning sun streaming through the windows created an almost surreal atmosphere, as if they were actors in a play, rather than people facing a reality that grew more complex by the minute. "Before we open this," Jack said, his hand resting on the box, "is there anything you'd like to tell us, Marcus?" Marcus's fingers drummed nervously on the kitchen table. "I don't know what you're suggesting, Mr. Carter. I worked here for 3 years, gave my notice properly and moved on." "That's all there is to it." Emily placed coffee cups in front of everyone, noting how Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he reached for his. Through the kitchen window, she could see Star in the paddock, still pacing anxiously, his attention fixed on the house. "Let's start with something simple then," Jack continued, removing the journal from the box. "Can you explain why we found this buried on our property, along with some other items that raised some very serious questions?" Marcus's face remained carefully neutral, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "I don't know anything about any buried boxes," he said, but his eyes kept returning to the journal as if drawn by an invisible force. Sarah, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. "The cameras, Marcus. Were you responsible for the cameras going down last night?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "What? No, He started, then caught himself. "I don't know anything about your cameras." Emily opened the journal, its pages crackling with age. As she began to read, her eyes widened. "This isn't just any journal," she said softly. These are notes about the farm, about our horses, about our security routines, dating back months before the accident. Jack pulled out the photographs from the box, spreading them on the table. They showed various angles of the farm, the stables, the training areas, all taken from hidden vantage points. But it was the last photo that caused Emily's hands to shake. A clear shot of Ethan riding Star along the trail, clearly taken without their knowledge. "I think," Jack said, his voice dangerously quiet, "you need to start telling us the truth, Marcus. Starting with why you were really here this morning and what you know about these items." The tension in the room was interrupted by a commotion from outside. Star's agitated neighing had reached a fever pitch. Emily rushed to the window to see the horse rearing up, his attention focused on something at the edge of the property. Through the morning mist, a figure was visible near the tree line, quickly disappearing into the woods. Without warning, Marcus jumped up from his chair, knocking his coffee cup to the floor. But before he could move toward the door, Sarah and Jack blocked his path. "That's your partner out there, isn't it?" Sarah demanded, her years of experience handling difficult situations evident in her steady voice. "The one you've been working with all along?" Marcus's composure finally cracked, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "You don't understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "None of you understand what's really going on here." Emily turned from the window, clutching the journal to her chest. "Then help us understand, Marcus. Help us understand why Star has been trying to tell us something all these months. Help us understand why my son's watch was buried in that box when it should have been with him that day." Outside, Star's behavior had shifted from agitation to determination. The horse moved purposefully toward the trail that led to the woods, stopping to look back at the house as if waiting for someone to follow. It was the same trail where everything had changed, where their lives had taken an unexpected turn. The morning's revelations had shaken the Carter household to its core. As they watched Star's determined stance near the trail, it became clear that the horse was no longer just signaling, he was leading them somewhere. Emily grabbed her jacket, a sudden resolve strengthening her steps. "We need to follow him," she declared, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Star's been trying to show us something all along, and we've been too blind to see it." Jack nodded, keeping a watchful eye on Marcus, who seemed to have deflated in his chair under Sarah's vigilant gaze. "Sarah, can you stay here with Mr. Thompson? I believe the police will want to speak with him about these documents." The mention of police caused Marcus to pale further. "Wait," he said, his voice cracking. I can explain everything. But you need to understand, it wasn't supposed to happen like this." "Like what?" Jack demanded, but Star's insistent neighing drew their attention back to the urgent matter at hand. The horse was moving back and forth along the trail entrance, his behavior reminiscent of how Ethan used to describe him, not just as an animal, but as a guardian, a protector. Emily and Jack made their way to where Star waited, his intelligent eyes focused on them with an almost human-like intensity. As they approached, he began walking down the trail, stopping occasionally to ensure they were following. The morning mist still clung to the ground, creating an ethereal atmosphere as they followed Star deeper into the wooded area. The trail was familiar. They had walked it countless times before, but today it felt different, charged with an energy they couldn't explain. Star led them past the big oak tree where the rusty spur had been found, then veered off the main path onto a lesser-used track. The undergrowth was thick here, but the horse moved with purpose, as if following a map only he could see. "Jack," Emily whispered, grabbing her husband's arm. "Look at this." She pointed to a series of marks on the trees, small notches that would have been invisible to anyone not looking for them. They formed a pattern leading deeper into the woods. "Trail markers," Jack muttered, his years of experience in the countryside kicking in. "Professional ones. Someone's been using this route regularly." Star stopped in a small clearing, pawing at the ground near an old fallen log. As Jack and Emily caught up, they noticed something odd about the arrangement of branches and leaves around the area. Too neat, too deliberate. Jack began clearing away the debris, revealing what appeared to be a hidden entrance to an old storm cellar, its wooden doors weathered but sturdy. A heavy padlock secured the entrance, but it was clear from the disturbed earth around it that it had been accessed recently. "This isn't on any of our property maps," Jack said, examining the lock. "This cellar shouldn't be here." Emily's mind raced back to all the times Star had tried to lead Ethan away from the main trail. How the boy had mentioned his horse seeming agitated in this part of the woods. Now it all made sense. Star had known about this place all along. The sound of approaching footsteps caused them both to freeze. Through the trees, they could make out two figures moving quickly in their direction. Star's ears pricked forward, and he positioned himself between the carters and the approaching threat, his powerful body tense and ready. "Over here!" A familiar voice called out. It was Sarah, and with her was Officer Bennett from the local police department. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," Marcus started talking. "You need to hear this." Officer Bennett reached them first, his experienced eyes taking in the scene, the hidden cellar, the trail markers, and most importantly, Star's protective stance. "We've been investigating a series of equipment thefts from high-end horse farms across 3 states, he explained. "But I never thought it would lead us here." Sarah joined them, slightly out of breath. Marcus confessed that he was part of a sophisticated operation. They've been using abandoned structures like this to store stolen equipment before moving it across state lines. But that's not all. He says there's evidence in that cellar that changes everything we thought we knew about what happened to Ethan. Star's behavior suddenly changed. He moved to the cellar doors and began pawing at them with renewed urgency. His actions were no longer just those of a distressed animal. They were the calculated moves of a creature who had witnessed something crucial and had been trying to reveal the truth all along. Emily felt her heart racing as Officer Bennett began working on the padlock. All these months, they had lived with an incomplete story, accepting explanations that never quite felt right. But Star had known. He had always known. And now, finally, they were about to uncover the truth that had been literally buried in their own backyard. The old cellar doors creaked open under Officer Bennett's careful handling, revealing a set of worn wooden stairs descending into darkness. The beam from his flashlight cut through the gloom, illuminating what appeared to be a sophisticated storage space beneath the earth. Star remained close to Emily, his presence both protective and reassuring. The horse's behavior had changed subtly. There was an air of anticipation about him now, as if he knew they were finally on the verge of understanding what he had been trying to tell them all along. "Be careful," Officer Bennett warned as they made their way down the stairs. "This place has been used recently." The cellar was larger than expected, with several rooms branching off from the main area. The first room contained exactly what they had suspected: expensive riding equipment, each piece carefully wrapped and labeled, ready for transport. But it was the second room that made Emily gasp. There, pinned to a corkboard on the wall, were detailed maps of various horse farms in the region, including their own. Next to each map were photographs, schedules, and notes about security systems. It was a meticulously planned operation, far more extensive than a simple equipment theft ring. "Look at this," Jack said, his voice tight with emotion. He was holding a ledger found in one of the drawers. "They've been tracking every major horse farm in Kentucky, but there's something else." He flipped through the pages, stopping at an entry from months ago. They were planning something bigger than just stealing equipment. Officer Bennett examined the ledger closely. "This matches our investigation perfectly. We've been tracking a sophisticated group that's been targeting premium horse farms, but we could never figure out how they were getting their inside information." Sarah, who had been examining the corkboard, suddenly called out, "Mr. Carter, these photos, they show all the blind spots in your security system, and look at the dates. They go back to before Marcus started working for you." Emily felt her knees weaken as the implications sank in. "He was planted here," she whispered. "All this time." Star's sudden whinnying from above drew their attention. The horse had remained at the cellar entrance, and now his agitation was clear even from below. Jack hurried up the stairs to check on him, only to find Star pawing at a specific spot near the cellar's outer wall. "There's something else here," Jack called down. Officer Bennett quickly joined him, and together they began clearing away years of accumulated debris from the area Star indicated. Beneath the layers of dirt and leaves, they uncovered a small metal safe, its surface weathered but intact. Unlike the equipment in the cellar, this wasn't meant to be moved. It had been deliberately buried and forgotten. "Stand back," Officer Bennett instructed, examining the safe's lock. "This looks like an older model. I think we can get it open." As they worked on the safe, Emily's mind raced through all the strange incidents of the past months. Star's persistent digging, his reaction to Marcus, his unusual behavior near the trail. Every action had been deliberate, every response calculated. The horse hadn't just been grieving, he'd been trying to expose a truth that had been hidden in plain sight. The safe's lock finally gave way with a rusty groan. Inside, they found a collection of documents that made Officer Bennett's expression darken. "This is bigger than we thought," he said, carefully examining the papers. "These aren't just records of thefts, this is evidence of a long-term operation involving multiple farms across the country." But it was what lay at the bottom of the safe that caused Emily's heart to skip a beat. A familiar blue notebook, its pages filled with Ethan's distinctive handwriting. As she opened it with trembling hands, the truth began to emerge in her son's own words. "Mom," Sarah read over her shoulder, her voice catching, "if you're reading this, it means Star led you here. I discovered something I wasn't supposed to see." The notebook contained detailed observations and dates. Ethan had noticed suspicious activities around the farm and had begun documenting them. He had seen things, understood things, and Star had been his only confidant. The horse hadn't just been his companion, he had been a witness to everything. Above them, Star's determined stance hadn't wavered. He stood guard at the cellar entrance like a sentinel, his mission finally nearing completion. After months of trying to communicate through the only means available to him, the loyal horse was finally able to reveal the truth he had carried for so long. Emily's hands trembled as she continued reading Ethan's notebook, each page revealing more of the truth her son had discovered. The boy's meticulous notes painted a picture of increasing concern as he observed suspicious activities around the farm. "He knew," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Ethan knew something wasn't right, and he documented everything." Jack leaned over her shoulder, reading entries that detailed unusual midnight activities, mysterious phone calls, and strange visitors to the property. Through it all, one detail kept appearing. Star had been with Ethan during many of these observations, the faithful horse becoming an unwitting witness to events that would later prove crucial. Officer Bennett carefully photographed each page of the notebook, while Sarah continued examining the other documents from the safe. "The dates match perfectly," Sarah noted, comparing Ethan's entries with the records they'd found. He was tracking their movements without them realizing it. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees above, casting dappled shadows over the scene. Star remained vigilant, his ears constantly moving, tracking every sound in the surrounding woods. His behavior now made perfect sense. He had been trying to lead them to this evidence all along. "There's something else," Jack said, pulling out a folded paper from between the notebook's pages. It was a hand-drawn map of the property, with specific locations marked in Ethan's careful handwriting. One spot was circled repeatedly, an old oak tree near the edge of the property. Star's ears pricked forward at the rustling of the paper, and he suddenly moved from his position, heading purposefully toward the trail. His behavior was clear. There was more to discover. "He wants us to follow him again," Emily said, rising to her feet. Officer Bennett nodded, gesturing for one of his deputies to secure the cellar while they investigated this new lead. The group followed Star through the woods, the horse moving with determined steps toward the marked location on Ethan's map. The old oak tree stood majestically against the afternoon sky, its branches spreading wide over a small clearing. As they approached, Star began his now familiar pawing at the ground near the tree's massive roots. Jack and Officer Bennett carefully began clearing away the accumulated leaves and dirt, revealing something that made them all catch their breath: a small waterproof container, carefully hidden among the roots. Inside the container, they found more of Ethan's notes, along with a small digital camera. The final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The camera contained photos that Ethan had taken secretly, documenting suspicious meetings and activities around the farm. "Look at this," Sarah said, examining the camera's display. "These photos show Marcus meeting with unknown individuals at odd hours. And this one..." She paused, zooming in on a particular image. "This shows them accessing the cellar we just found." Emily's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and sadness as she realized the full extent of what her son had uncovered. He hadn't just stumbled upon their operation, he had been carefully gathering evidence, building a case with the kind of detail and precision that seemed beyond his years. Star stood nearby, his presence a constant reminder of the unbreakable bond he had shared with Ethan. The horse had not only been present during Ethan's investigations, but had also served as his protector, and ultimately became the keeper of his secrets. "The last entry," Officer Bennett noted, carefully turning to the final pages of the notebook, was written the day before the accident. Ethan wrote that he had finally gathered enough evidence and was planning to reveal everything he'd discovered. A sudden breeze rustled through the leaves above, carrying with it the weight of understanding. Star's strange behavior since that day, his persistent digging, his reactions to certain people, his attempts to draw attention to specific locations, it had all been part of his desperate effort to continue what Ethan had started. The loyal horse had carried the burden of truth for months, unable to communicate what he knew except through his actions. Now, as the full scope of Ethan's discovery came to light, Star's mission was finally reaching its conclusion. Emily reached out to stroke Star's neck, feeling the strong muscles relax under her touch. "You've been trying to tell us all along," she whispered to the horse. "You were protecting Ethan's legacy, making sure the truth would come out." The afternoon sun began its descent, casting long shadows through the trees, but the darkness that had surrounded the events of the past months was finally lifting. Star had done what seemed impossible. He had bridged the gap between what was lost and what needed to be found, between silence and truth. Back at the main house, the atmosphere was charged with a mix of emotions as Officer Bennett and his team began processing all the evidence they had discovered. The kitchen table was covered with documents, photos, and Ethan's notebooks, each piece adding to the larger picture of what had truly transpired at the Carter Horse Farm. Marcus Thompson sat in the study under police supervision, his earlier bravado completely dissolved. The weight of the evidence against him and his co-conspirators was overwhelming, made even more powerful by the detailed documentation Ethan had left behind. Emily stood by the window, watching as Star grazed peacefully in the paddock. The horse's demeanor had changed significantly since their discoveries. Gone was the anxious pacing and desperate pawing at the ground. He seemed calmer now, as if relieved that his message had finally been understood. "Mrs. Carter," Officer Bennett called softly, holding up one of the documents they'd found. "I think you should see this. It's a letter Ethan wrote, dated the day before the incident." Emily took the paper with trembling hands, Jack coming to stand beside her as she began to read their son's words. "Dear Mom and Dad, if you're reading this, it means Star has succeeded in showing you what I discovered. I knew something strange was happening at our farm, and I couldn't ignore it. Star has been my partner in this investigation. He's smarter than anyone knows. He's helped me track their movements and has always warned me when someone was approaching. I've gathered all the evidence about the equipment theft operation. Marcus isn't who he claims to be. He's part of a larger organization that's been targeting horse farms across the country. They've been using our property as a base for their operations, taking advantage of our reputation to avoid suspicion. Star knows everything. He's been with me during every step of my investigation. If anything happens to me, trust him. He'll show you the truth. Love, Ethan." Sarah, who had been organizing the evidence with the police team, approached with another discovery. "We found this hidden in the cellar's electrical panel," she said, holding up a small recording device. "It seems Ethan was able to capture some of their conversations." The recordings revealed the full scope of the operation: multiple farms targeted, millions in equipment stolen, and a complex network of people involved. But more importantly, they revealed how Ethan had stumbled upon their activities and how he had carefully gathered evidence while maintaining his normal routine to avoid suspicion. Star's role in the investigation became clearer with each new piece of evidence. Ethan's notes detailed how the horse would stamp his hoof 3 times when someone from the theft ring approached, how he would position himself to block the view of anyone trying to observe Ethan documenting their activities, and how he seemed to understand the importance of keeping their discovery secret. The horse wasn't just his pet, Officer Bennett observed, watching Star through the window. He was Ethan's protector and partner, and after the incident, he became the guardian of all this evidence. Jack pulled out the original rusty spur they had found, the first clue that had started their investigation. "Star led us to this first," he said thoughtfully. "He knew exactly where to start, how to get our attention." Emily walked outside, approaching Star in the paddock. The horse lifted his head as she neared, his intelligent eyes meeting hers with what seemed like understanding. She reached out to stroke his neck, feeling the strong muscles beneath her hand. "You never gave up," she whispered to him. "All these months, you kept trying to show us what Ethan had found. You kept his secret safe until we were ready to understand." The evening sun cast a golden glow over the farm as police officers continued their work, documenting evidence and securing the scene. Star stood beside Emily, his presence solid and reassuring, no longer the anxious, troubled horse they had worried about for months. He had completed his mission. Ethan's discovery was finally in the right hands. In the days that followed their discoveries, the Carter Horse Farm began to transform. The heavy cloud of uncertainty that had hung over the property for months gradually lifted, replaced by a sense of purpose and renewal. The police investigation continued, but now with a clear direction, thanks to the evidence Ethan had meticulously gathered and Star had helped uncover. Emily found herself spending more time in the stables, particularly with Star, whose behavior had undergone a remarkable change. The anxious, restless horse had been replaced by a calm, almost serene presence. He still maintained his watchful nature, but the desperate urgency that had characterized his actions for so long had disappeared. "It's amazing how different he is now," Sarah remarked one morning as they watched Star in the training ring. The horse moved with grace and confidence, showing the natural talent that had first caught Ethan's eye. "It's like he knows his mission is complete." The investigation had revealed the full extent of the theft ring's operations. Multiple arrests had been made across 3 states, and farms that had been targeted were finally getting answers about their stolen equipment. The Carters' reputation, far from being tarnished by the revelations, had grown stronger as people learned how Ethan and Star had uncovered the truth. "We've received calls from several farm owners," Jack shared during dinner one evening. "They want to implement new security measures based on what we've learned. Some have even asked about training programs for their horses inspired by Star's story." The media had picked up on the story, fascinated by the tale of a boy and his horse working together to uncover a criminal operation. But the Carters were careful about which details they shared, protecting the intimate nature of Ethan's relationship with Star and the sacred trust between them. One quiet afternoon, Emily found herself in Ethan's room, reading through more of his journals. These weren't the investigation notes, but rather his personal thoughts about Star and their special bond. His words painted a picture of a connection that went beyond the usual relationship between a boy and his horse. Star isn't just smart, he understands things in a way that's hard to explain. Today, when we were tracking the suspicious activities near the old trail, he knew exactly when to be quiet and when to create a distraction. "It's like he can read my mind, know exactly what I need him to do. I trust him completely." Outside, Star's whinny caught her attention. The horse was standing by the fence, looking toward the setting sun. Emily joined him, noting how he shifted slightly to make room for her, just as he used to do with Ethan. "You know," she said softly, stroking his neck, "I always knew you were special, but I never realized just how much until now. You didn't just carry Ethan's secret, you carried his courage, his determination to do what was right." The police had finished processing most of the evidence, but they continued to be amazed by the detailed nature of Ethan's investigation. Officer Bennett had commented that some of the documentation techniques showed remarkable sophistication for someone so young. "He had a good partner," was all Jack had said in response, glancing at Star with newfound respect. The farm began to heal, much like its inhabitants. The security systems were upgraded, new staff were carefully vetted, and procedures were put in place to prevent any similar infiltration. But perhaps the most significant change was in how they viewed their horses, particularly Star. Sarah had started incorporating some of Ethan's training methods into her work with other horses, methods she had discovered in his notebooks. "He understood something fundamental about horses," she explained to Emily. "He knew they were capable of far more than just following commands. They could be true partners." Star's role at the farm evolved as well. While he remained Emily's special charge, he also became something of a mentor to the younger horses. His calm, steady presence seemed to help them learn faster, and his intuitive understanding of human intentions made him invaluable in training sessions. Visitors to the farm often remarked on the special atmosphere that seemed to surround Star's stable. Children were particularly drawn to him, sensing perhaps the same gentle wisdom that Ethan had recognized years ago. The horse appeared to take his new role seriously, treating each young visitor with patient attention. One evening, as the sun set over the Kentucky hills, Emily watched Star standing sentinel over the paddock. His noble profile was silhouetted against the golden sky, and for a moment she could almost see him as Ethan had. Not just as a remarkable horse, but as a guardian of truth, a keeper of secrets, and a bridge between worlds that most people never thought to connect. Word of Star's remarkable role in uncovering the truth spread throughout Kentucky's equestrian community like wildfire. The Carter Horse Farm, once known primarily for its championship thoroughbreds, now became a symbol of something far more profound: the extraordinary bond between humans and horses. The autumn air carried a sense of renewal as Emily watched a group of visiting veterinary students observing Star in the training ring. The prestigious equine program at the local university had approached the Carters about establishing a special research project focused on horse behavior and intelligence, inspired by Star's story. "What we're seeing here challenges everything we thought we knew about equine cognitive abilities, Doctor. Rachel Martinez, the lead researcher, explained as she watched Star demonstrate his remarkable intuition with a young, nervous horse. The way he communicates, his problem-solving abilities, his emotional intelligence, it's extraordinary. Jack stood beside the ring, pride evident in his expression as Star guided the young horse through a series of gentle exercises. The older stallion had developed an uncanny ability to calm anxious horses, much as he had once provided comfort and confidence to Ethan. "We're seeing similar patterns in other farms now," Sarah shared during a break in training. "Owners are paying more attention to their horses' behavior, looking for signs of understanding we might have missed before." Star's story has changed how people view these animals. The farm itself had undergone a transformation. The security upgrades implemented after the investigation had become a model for other establishments, but it was the philosophical changes that made the biggest impact. The Carters had established new training protocols based on Ethan's notes and Star's demonstrated abilities. Emily found herself regularly consulting Ethan's journals, discovering new insights in her son's observations. His detailed notes about Star's behavior and training methods had become the foundation for a revolutionary approach to horse care and training. "He always said Star was trying to tell us something," she remarked to Jack one evening as they watched the sunset from the porch. "He understood that horses have their own way of communicating if we're just willing to listen." The police investigation had concluded, resulting in multiple convictions and the recovery of stolen equipment worth millions. But the true value of what had been uncovered went far beyond material goods. It had revealed something profound about the capacity of horses to understand, to protect, and to communicate vital truths. Star's daily routine now included special sessions with visiting experts and students, though he seemed to take the attention in stride. His gentle demeanor with children remained especially touching. He appeared to sense their innocence and responded with infinite patience, much as he had with Ethan. "Watch how he adjusts his behavior for each visitor," Dr. Martinez noted during one observation session. "He's not just responding to commands, he's actively reading and responding to emotional cues." This level of emotional intelligence is remarkable. The farm had become a gathering place for people seeking to understand the deeper possibilities of human-horse relationships. Trainers, researchers, and horse lovers from around the country came to observe and learn from Star's example. One particularly moving moment came when a young girl, initially terrified of horses, found herself drawn to Star's gentle presence. The horse had approached her carefully, lowering his head to her level and remaining perfectly still until she found the courage to reach out and touch him. "That's exactly how he was with Ethan in the beginning," Emily remembered aloud, watching the scene unfold. "He has this way of making you feel safe, understood." The story of Star's role in uncovering the truth had attracted attention from major equestrian publications. But what fascinated people most wasn't just the discovery of the criminal operation, it was the demonstration of how much more horses could understand and communicate than anyone had previously believed. As the day drew to a close, Emily found Star in his favorite spot near the old oak tree. The horse's presence there no longer carried the desperate urgency of before, but rather a peaceful watchfulness. He had become not just a symbol of loyalty and intelligence, but a living testament to the profound connections possible between humans and horses. The Kentucky Horse Park had never seen such an unusual ceremony. On a crisp autumn morning, hundreds of people gathered to witness the dedication of a new training center, the Ethan Carter Memorial Equine Intelligence and Communication Center. At the heart of the ceremony stood Star, his coat gleaming in the morning sun, carrying himself with the dignity that had become his trademark. "Today, we're not just dedicating a building," Jack Carter addressed the crowd, his voice steady and clear. "We're celebrating a revolutionary understanding of the bond between humans and horses." a understanding that our son Ethan and his remarkable horse Star helped bring to light. The new center would serve as both a research facility and a training ground where the methods documented in Ethan's journals would be studied and developed further. Star had become instrumental in demonstrating these techniques, working with trainers to help them understand the subtle ways horses communicate. Emily watched from beside the podium as Sarah led Star forward for the ceremonial ribbon cutting. The horse moved with graceful precision, stopping exactly where needed, without any visible command. The audience murmured in appreciation at this small but telling demonstration of his intelligence. What we've learned from Star has changed our entire approach to horse training, Dr. Martinez explained to the gathered crowd. We're discovering that horses possess levels of emotional intelligence and communication abilities that we never fully appreciated before. The methods young Ethan instinctively developed with Star are proving to be groundbreaking in our field. The ceremony included demonstrations of the new training techniques, with Star taking center stage. He worked with several different horses, showing how gentle guidance and understanding could achieve far more than traditional methods. The most touching moment came when he helped a nervous young colt overcome its fear of crossing a small bridge, demonstrating the same patience and wisdom he had shown in uncovering the truth months ago. "Look at how he positions himself," Sarah pointed out to the observers. "He's not just showing the young horse what to do, he's providing emotional support, building trust." This is what Ethan understood about him from the beginning. The Carter Horse Farm had also undergone a transformation. What had once been primarily a breeding and training facility had evolved into a center for studying and promoting deeper understanding between horses and humans. The security improvements implemented after the investigation had become secondary to the revolutionary training methods being developed. Local schools had begun bringing students for educational programs where they learned about horse behavior and communication. Star had a special way with children, seeming to understand instinctively which ones needed extra gentleness and patience. It was reminiscent of how he had worked with Ethan, building trust and understanding over time. We've documented over 50 distinct behaviors Star uses to communicate different situations, Dr. Martinez shared during her presentation. From warning signals to expressions of encouragement, he has a sophisticated repertoire of communication methods. What's more remarkable is how he adapts these methods depending on who he's interacting with. The ceremony also marked the launch of a scholarship program in Ethan's name, designed to support young people interested in studying equine behavior and communication. The first recipient was a local girl who had overcome her fear of horses through working with Star and had subsequently developed a passionate interest in understanding horse psychology. As the formal proceedings concluded, Emily found herself standing with Star near the new center's entrance. The horse's presence beside her was steady and comforting, just as it had been throughout the months of uncertainty and discovery. He had transformed from a symbol of unresolved mystery into a beacon of hope and understanding. "You know," she said softly to Star, stroking his neck, "Ethan always said you were more than just a horse. He saw what everyone else is finally beginning to understand, that you have wisdom to share if we're only willing to listen." The horse gently nudged her shoulder, a gesture so familiar it brought tears to her eyes. In that moment, she could almost hear Ethan's voice. "Star knows, Mom. He always knows." The truth of those words had proven more profound than anyone could have imagined. Spring arrived at the Carter Horse Farm with a renewed sense of purpose. The fresh green grass sparkled with morning dew as Emily made her way to the training arena, where Star was already waiting. The past year had brought unprecedented changes to their lives and to the equestrian community as a whole. The latest research paper on Star's methods has been accepted for publication, Dr. Martinez announced during their morning meeting. The International Equine Behavior Conference wants to feature his case study as their keynote presentation. The scientific community had embraced the revolutionary training approaches that had emerged from Ethan's journals and Star's demonstrations. What had started as one boy's special connection with his horse had blossomed into a movement that was transforming how people understood and worked with horses worldwide. Jack reviewed the morning's schedule, which included a visit from representatives of several prestigious European riding academies. They're particularly interested in how Star helps evaluate young horses, he explained. His ability to identify and calm nervous animals has become legendary in the industry. The farm now hosted regular workshops where Star worked with troubled horses, demonstrating an almost supernatural ability to understand and address their fears. Trainers watched in amazement as he used subtle body language and positioning to communicate with other horses, teaching them through example rather than force. "It's like watching a master teacher at work," Sarah observed, as Star guided a skittish mare through a challenging obstacle course. "He knows exactly when to push and when to step back." These are insights that could take humans years to develop. The Carter Horse Farm had become a beacon of innovation in the equestrian world. The security improvements implemented after the investigation had evolved into a comprehensive program that other farms eagerly adopted. But it was the revolutionary training methods that truly set them apart. Emily found herself regularly consulting Ethan's journals, discovering new layers of meaning in his observations. "Star doesn't just react to situations," he had written. "He anticipates them. He understands intentions before they become actions." The truth of those words was demonstrated daily as Star worked with visitors to the farm. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to know which approach would work best with each individual, whether horse or human. His gentle methods had proven particularly effective with rescued horses, helping them overcome past traumas and learn to trust again. "We're seeing remarkable success rates with previously unmanageable horses," Dr. Martinez reported, reviewing their latest data. Star's techniques, combined with Ethan's documented methods, are showing consistent positive results across different breeds and temperaments. The farm had also become a sanctuary of sorts, a place where people came to witness the extraordinary bond between humans and horses. Children who had never been around horses found themselves drawn to Star's gentle presence, while experienced riders discovered new depths to their understanding of equine behavior. One morning, as Emily watched Star working with a group of young horses, she noticed something that brought tears to her eyes. The stallion was using the exact same approach she had seen him use with Ethan years ago. Patient, gentle, building trust through small steps and constant encouragement. "He's teaching them the same way he taught Ethan," Sarah remarked softly, standing beside her. "All those years ago, he wasn't just being a good horse, he was showing us a better way to connect." The impact of Star's legacy extended far beyond the boundaries of the farm. Other facilities had begun implementing similar programs, reporting dramatic improvements in their horses' well-being and training progress. The ripple effect of one horse's extraordinary abilities and one boy's understanding was transforming the entire industry. As the sun climbed higher in the spring sky, Emily watched Star lead his small group of students through their paces. Each movement was purposeful, each interaction meaningful. He had become more than just a symbol of truth and justice. He was now a teacher, sharing the wisdom that Ethan had recognized in him so long ago. Star's story had become a beacon of hope, demonstrating that the bonds between humans and animals could transcend ordinary understanding. His journey from trusted companion to revealer of truth, and finally to teacher and guide, had opened new possibilities in the world of equine relationships. The golden light of a Kentucky sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues as Emily Carter stood at the newly dedicated memorial garden at the heart of their farm. The space had been transformed into a peaceful sanctuary, with a beautiful bronze statue of a young boy and his horse as its centerpiece. The plaque beneath it read, "In honor of Ethan and Star, they showed us the true meaning of trust and understanding." Star grazed peacefully nearby, his coat gleaming in the evening light. At 13 years old, he carried himself with the same dignity and grace that had always marked his character, though his role had evolved far beyond anything they could have imagined. "Sometimes," Jack said, joining his wife by the memorial, "I think about how different things might have been if we hadn't finally understood what Star was trying to tell us all those months ago." The farm had become a worldwide center for innovative equine training and research. Experts from every corner of the globe came to study the methods that had emerged from Ethan's insights and Star's remarkable abilities. The old training rings now hosted international workshops, while the newly built education center welcomed students from prestigious veterinary and behavioral programs. Sarah approached them, leading a young colt that had arrived at the farm just days ago. "He's another success story," she announced proudly. "Star worked with him this morning, and already we're seeing remarkable progress." His former owners wouldn't believe the difference. The transformation of the Carter horse farm had rippled through the entire equestrian community. Their security protocols had become the industry standard, but it was their revolutionary approach to horse training and communication that had truly changed the landscape of horse-human relationships. Dr. Martinez emerged from her office, waving a stack of papers excitedly. "The latest results are extraordinary," she called out. "The longitudinal study shows consistent success rates across all participating farms that have implemented Star's methods. We're seeing behavioral improvements that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago." Emily watched as Star lifted his head, ears pricking forward at the sound of children's voices. A group of students from the local elementary school was arriving for their weekly session at the farm's education program. The horse made his way to the fence, greeting them with the gentle patience that had become his trademark. "It's amazing," one of the teachers commented, watching her students interact with Star. "Some of these children have never been around horses before, but with him they feel completely at ease. He seems to know exactly what each child needs." The mystery that had once surrounded Star's unusual behavior had transformed into understanding, leading to breakthrough after breakthrough in equine communication. Ethan's detailed journals, combined with Star's demonstrations, had opened new frontiers in the field of horse psychology and training. As twilight settled over the farm, Emily found herself back at the old oak tree where so many crucial discoveries had been made. Star followed, his hooves making soft sounds in the grass. The tree had been incorporated into the memorial garden, its strong branches now sheltering a peaceful sitting area where visitors could reflect and observe the horses in the nearby paddock. "You know," Jack said softly, "Ethan would be proud of all this. Not just because we uncovered the truth, but because of what it led to. All these lives being changed, all these new understandings being discovered." Star nickered softly, pressing his nose gently against Emily's shoulder in a gesture that had become familiar over the years. In that moment, she felt the truth of what Ethan had always known, that horses were capable of far more understanding, more compassion, and more wisdom than anyone had imagined. The Carter Horse Farm had become more than just a premier equestrian facility. It was now a place of healing, learning, and discovery. The legacy of a boy's trust in his horse and that horse's unwavering loyalty had created ripples that continued to spread throughout the world of horse training and beyond. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Emily watched Star make his way back to his favorite spot near the memorial. He stood there, silhouetted against the twilight, every bit the guardian and teacher he had become. His story had transformed from one of mystery and revelation to one of hope and possibility, showing the world that the bonds between humans and horses could transcend all boundaries. The mystery of Star had evolved into something far greater, a living testament to the extraordinary connections possible between humans and horses, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest truths come to us not through words, but through the silent wisdom of those we trust most. Dear viewers, we hope Star's remarkable journey has touched your hearts as deeply as it has transformed the lives of the Carter family and the entire equestrian community. For more inspiring stories that explore the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals, we've created a special playlist you can find by clicking to your left. If this story moved you, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring you unique tales that celebrate the profound connections that enrich our lives. Share your own stories of animal wisdom and loyalty in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Join us tomorrow for another touching story that reminds us of the extraordinary bonds we share with our animal companions.